last 4 or 5 weeks on Wednesday nights, I've taken as my subject digital drugs. And we've put these online, and we will this tonight as well. And there's been quite a bit of response from around the country, and a lot of people that have listened to them, and so it kind of has struck a chord. And what we've done is we've dealt with some of the dangers that are presented in the digital world. The internet, cell phones, video games, all of that. It's part of a new reality that all of us live in, and you're not going to be able to ignore it and escape it. And it's imperative that we recognize the perils that lies in that, the dangers, the hazards, and to put up barriers to protect not only ourselves but our families as well. At age 5, more than 50% of children have regular interaction with a computer or tablet device. And by 7 or 8 years of age, most children regularly play video games. Teenagers now send an average of 3,300 text messages a month. By the time our children reach middle school, they have spent more time with media than with their parents or teachers. This is the new reality that we live in. And so in these sermons, I've not attempted to guilt you into escaping the digital world, because I don't believe it's possible. And in fact, I don't even think that it's feasible. Because we recognize that the digital age has brought a lot of improvements, a lot of advancements to our world. It's certainly made life a lot more convenient. And I think that it's even a good tool for the gospel's sake. The internet is a great tool for spreading the gospel and getting our message out. And so we don't deny the benefits of living in this age that we live in, but we're not blind to the dangers and to the hazards that we face. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to shine a light on some of the problem areas and to make us aware lest our lives get overtaken by some new addiction. The goal is use, but not misuse. Use, but not abuse. Balance. Balance is what we're looking for. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to come back to some of those problem areas, and I'm going to be intensely practical tonight, and I just want to give you some suggestions, some ideas, some rules, and you'll have to decide to adopt any of these, all of these, none of these, make up your own list, but hopefully to probe some thinking and to get us to thinking about what can you do to protect yourself as much as is possible. How do we use digital tools without becoming addicted? How do you monitor your online use? What rules should you place on your children concerning the internet and all things connected? We use the word stewardship often when we're talking about money or time or talents, but I think that's a good word to apply in our digital lives as well. And just as we ought to be wise managers of our finances and our other resources, we should be wise managers of how we manage the online world. And I'll give you a phrase tonight. The key to good stewardship is being intentional in how we live. A person who spends impulsively, who never commits himself to a budget, who doesn't have a spending plan, we talked about that several months ago, doesn't plan for emergencies, he's going to always be in financial difficulty. You have to spend your money on purpose. I think that it's Dave Ramsey that says, instead of wondering where your money went, you have to tell your money where to go. And the idea of intentional living, I believe, should govern also our use of the digital universe. Because the internet is a dangerous place to just play, to just roam. Every application, whether it is email or YouTube or Google or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is, it can very easily bring you the most depraved content imaginable. Some parents allow their children to have social media accounts. If that child either ignorantly or intentionally enters one wrong word in the search engine in that application, they could instantly be exposed to images and ideas that they never knew existed. And so it is impossible to overstate the dangers of wasted time, corrupt communications, immoral content that represents the dangers, which is why you have to have accountability, you have to have rules, you have to have intentionality whenever you enter into that world. And I believe that it all begins with honesty. With honesty. How has the digital world invaded and changed your life? And how much of it has been spiritually healthy and productive? Now, you may not be the kid that's playing video games at 3 o'clock in the morning, all right? But how much time are you wasting online? What are you exposing your soul to? And what do you have to show for the hours that you spent just this week Googling and Facebooking and tweeting and all the rest of it? I've referenced a book several times. It's in my library, The Digital Invasion by a man named Dr. Archibald Hart. He's a psychologist, and so a lot of the book is psychology stuff that I just have to, I don't understand. But in that book, he gives a digital assessment use quiz, basically a list of questions to probe some thinking as to how connected are you. I'll just give you some of the questions. Do you text and drive even though you know it's not the safe thing to do? I'm going to say something about that. Do you get the urge to use your smartphone when someone else is talking to you? Do you ever feel something hasn't really happened until you post it on Facebook? Do you ever stay on the internet longer than you intended to when you sit down in front of your computer? Do you check your email or social media accounts compulsively, more frequently than is necessary? Does your family sit in the same room but not talk to each other because you are all interacting with your digital gadgets? Do you find a ringing or vibrating cell phone interrupts and trumps everything else? Are you experiencing a loss of interest in other activities you used to enjoy? Do you neglect yourself, sleeping, eating because of time spent in the digital world? Do you ever neglect chores or work because of time spent on the internet? Do you find that when you are sad, down, anxious, or moody, going on the internet lifts your mood? If you had to choose between the internet and any other social activity, how often would you choose the internet? Do you find that you have more friends and contacts online than you do in real life? Do you ever think about how you could focus better in real life without all these gadgets invading your space? Now, some of you score 100 on that. Some of you score a 0. And that's who I want to talk to tonight. Here's what I'm going to do tonight, and I've just sat down, I've just wrote a lot of suggestions and ideas. And I went online, and everybody's got 10 rules and 10 commandments for all of this and everything. And I'm not clever enough to do that, all right? So I'm just going to run through some things, and you might want to write these down. And I'm just trying to identify and give you some suggestions. And I'm not saying tonight that this is gospel and you have to do these things, but hopefully it does spark some conversation, some thought. Hopefully it wakes somebody up before we have a tragedy in this church. So here's the first thing I'll give you tonight. I'll give you 4 general suggestions to curb compulsive online activity. I know the title is too long, but it's what I understand, right? So here's the first suggestion. Do not check your email or social media accounts in the morning until you have had your devotions. Well, that's simple. You see, some people, when they wake up, they automatically reach for their smartphone, and before they even get out of bed, they have to look and see what was posted while they slept. And before you know it, they have spent an hour in the morning, which, by the way, is your best time, whether you're a morning person or not, but they've spent an hour on a smartphone or a computer at checking social media and email and what have you. So why don't you make it a rule? I'm not going to touch the phone until I've read my Bible and I have prayed today. That's a good suggestion. Suggestion number 2, set a time in the evening to end your digital day and not as you are drifting off to sleep. Close all digital devices at least 1 hour before your bedtime. You probably would sleep better. I'm not saying that I do all of these, but these are good suggestions. Here's another one. Take a digital fast 1 day a week. I'd recommend Sunday. That on this day, I will use my phone, my computer, for only what is absolutely necessary. But no social media, no email, no TV, no video games, no Google. Only what is absolutely necessary. And replace it with Christian music and reading good books and physical activities, or taking a walk in the woods, or just resting, maybe just meditating. Hey, we have lost the art of silence. Silence. Silence is a good thing. You can think. You can meditate. Take a digital fast 1 day a week. 1 day a week. Here's something I give you tonight. Etiquette and courtesy seems to be a dying practice. And I actually think that it would be good. Jacob, step outside if you would, help me as an usher. I think it would be good for churches to have an etiquette class to teach young people good manners. I think it would. I noticed Sunday night in the fellowship that we had a lot of kids in the food line before adults. Now, I would have got a knot yanked in my tail when I was a kid if I would have went through the food line before adults and before seniors. We didn't do that back in the dark ages. We just didn't do that, all right? And I don't know why parents wouldn't want to teach their kids the same thing nowadays, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. So common courtesy, etiquette. Have you ever noticed that when your cell phone rings or beeps, that you automatically make it the number one priority of your life, no matter what you're doing at the moment? Yeah. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with somebody and they kept checking their phone? And they're nodding their head like they're listening to you, but they're looking at their phone. Huh? They're not listening to you. You are a distraction to them. Huh? By the way, I think that's rude. I do. If you and I are having a conversation and the phone rings, hey, why are they all of a sudden more important to me? I was here first. Right? But that's where we've gotten. And you can watch people sitting in a restaurant and they're not even talking to each other, and they're just on their phones, and it's absent presence is what it is. So here's a rule. Do not answer your smartphone when you are visiting with someone. My phone is with me all the time. All the time. But if I'm talking to you and it beeps, I just push the button. If it is an emergency, they will call back. 3 or 4 times, and I'll get the message. Or they can leave a message, right? And every little beep, every little ding, it just automatically, it just takes us. When you're constantly checking your phone and you're in conversation with somebody else, what you're doing is you're telling that person that you're not as important as whatever is taking place on this phone right now. Since I've been doing these sermons, I've realized how attached I am to my cell phone. And I've been making efforts to just leave it behind. So yesterday I made a hospital visit and just left it in the car. You know, I was at my phone with 30 minutes. And you know that there was no earth-shattering emergency during that 30 minutes? So when you're visiting, turn your smartphone off. Now, I've talked about social media. I've already said my piece about it. I have no use for it. I know that it can have good uses. And there's a lot of other platforms besides Facebook. But let me give you just a couple of rules for social media, all right? Rules for social media. And smile, cheer up. This is joyous. This is glorious is what this is, all right? So here's a couple of rules for social media. Number one, the less the better. Amen. The less time and the less information. So don't be one of those people who has to post every day what you had for lunch and every headache that you have. I'm going to bust your bubble. Nobody cares. In fact, I'm going to just tell you, ain't nobody cares about you. Your life is just not that interesting. Do you feel bad today? Ain't nobody cares. Yeah. Are you depressed? Ain't nobody cares. Because they got their own problems and that's what they care about. Yeah. I'm not a privacy expert. I'll say something else about this in just a minute. But when you put your personal information out there on the internet, it is out there somewhere for somebody to use. So maintain some privacy. Keep some of you to yourself. The less the better. Number two, do not use the forums for silly debates. Titus 3 and verse 9, but avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and strivings about the law on social media, for they are unprofitable and vain. That's in the original Greek there. Some people live to argue, do they not? They just live to argue. And Facebook has just become another platform to debate over things that have no answer and no profit. Answer not a fool, or according to his folly, would apply to social media. The silliest thing in the world is a group of carnal Christians debating over some standard or some doctrine or some church matter or some church problems on Facebook. And some people, they just thrive on controversy, and while that's good for their pride, it doesn't do anything to encourage and edify and uplift. Amen. So just stay away from it. Stay away from it. So number three, be very selective who you follow and who you allow to follow you. Psalm 1 and verse 1, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there are ways that you can block or you can allow certain people to see you or for you not to see them. There's somebody, you know how to do that, all right? Now listen to me, all right? Especially you young people. You don't have 700 friends. You might have 7, okay? But you don't have 700 friends, and you got people following you, and you're following people that you don't even know. That's voyeuristic is what that is. Trying to follow somebody and I want to snoop in their life. For one thing, you should delete everybody tonight that criticizes Christianity and promotes a worldly lifestyle. Amen. Just go through and look at the music that they like. Contemporary, delete you. Contemporary, delete you. Country, delete you. Nope, you gone. Goodbye, Jack. Just keep on. Amen. You should under no circumstances be friends with an old flame if you are married. Amen. You're sitting in the living room late at night, the wife is in bed, and you're just roaming the internet. And the devil puts a name in your head, and you hadn't seen her in 30 years. And that old girlfriend pops up in your head, I wonder if she's on Facebook. You enter her name in, and lo and behold, there she is, and she's been divorced for 2 years, and you are 2 steps away from an affair. Amen. Here's another one. I made this one up myself. It's a good one. Do not send private messages to the opposite sex or minors. Now, when you post something, it's public. Everybody can see it. But then you can send just a message that just one person can see, or maybe a couple of people, however you do that. You should have as much diligence in how you act with the opposite sex online as you do in person. And it is just foolish to send a private message to a minor. Now listen, I don't think that every man's a pervert, all right? Please understand. But I believe it's wiser to stay away from the appearances of improper conduct. You're asking for trouble. Well, general rules for internet protection. Proverbs 25 and verse 28, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. You must set and keep boundaries for your family or you're asking for trouble. Listen, the internet is too dangerous to just surf without protections. Even if you don't have impure motives and you're not looking for filth, it will find you. When you watch a YouTube video of a man preaching, there is a sidebar down the side of related videos. And sometimes those related videos is nothing but softcore pornography. Ads can pop up from out of nowhere. Spam email all of a sudden will find itself in your inbox and it's inviting you to click a link to who knows where. And let me say this tonight, that if you are someone who is addicted to pornography already, you should not have a computer at all. Several years ago, a man came to my office after his wife had caught him with internet pornography for the second time. And after a very brief conversation, we talked about it. My counsel to him is you need to go home and you need to get rid of all computers and all electronic devices. Don't put safeguards on it because he knew how to get around that. He was smarter than his wife technologically. I said, you need to get rid of all of the computers. Now, that's not going to cure his addiction, all right? However, it just makes it harder. That's where he is getting it from, so it just stops it from getting it from there. Well, the problem is, he said, I have to have my computer for my job. Not a problem. Quit your job and find you a job where you don't have to have a computer. And of course, he thought that I was harsh and that's unreasonable. And so he did what the Lord directed him to do. Instead of getting rid of the computer, he got rid of the church. He found him another church to go to. Sure. That happens frequently, doesn't it? Huh? You say, well, that's kind of harsh. No, let me read harsh to you. Jesus. If thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. It is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast in hell. If Jesus advocated cutting your hand off before it sends you to hell, I think cutting the cord to the computer is not that bad. So let me give you some rules tonight. Number one, subscribe to an internet filtering service. Proverbs 4 and verse 14, enter not into the path of the wicked, go not in the way of evil men, avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. Internet filtering system attaches either to your modem or to your individual computer or tablet, blocks the categories of sites that you tell it to. You know how they work. They are not foolproof. They can be hacked. Your teenager probably can get around them. Some objectionable material can still get through them and not get caught. But they're a good first line of defense. If you want some names, Cyber Patrol, Net Nanny, Be Secure, Safe Eyes, some of the more popular filtering services. Secondly, insist on online accountability. Ecclesiastes 4 and verse 9, 2 are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. What accountability does is it opens yourself up to another person and allows them to see everything that you do online. If you are a parent, it should not be open for discussion with your children. You have every right to protect them, and your right to protect them is more important than their right to privacy. Amen. If you are a married man, this means that your wife, maybe another man, should be able to check your internet browsing history at any time. You should have no hidden accounts, no private passwords, no off limits to your accountability partner. OpenDNS is a service that runs through your network, and covers anything that connects to that network. Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes is an excellent service. It not only keeps a log of the sites accessed by individual devices, but it emails a report of those sites visited to the accountability partner. So, if your wife is your accountability partner, once a week she gets an email, and there's a list of every website that you have visited. Now, what man would object to his wife having a detailed report of every website that he visited? What godly teenager could possibly object to parents having a detailed report of every website they visited? What's the wrong with that? See, temptation is a real thing. And knowing that another person is going to see where you've been can be a source of strength in a moment of weakness. Number 3, use caution when giving out personal information. Now, I've not talked about privacy concerns of the internet because I don't know much about it, but I know that the World Wide Web is full of schemers and scammers, and they're looking for the next victim. Every app that you download to your smartphone wants to access your contacts, your location, your settings. I have certain news sites that I visit often, like Gateway Pundit and Drudge Report and sites like that. Here's what I have noticed. That when I search something on the internet, immediately on some of those websites, every ad is for what I just Googled. Last year, Parker and I got interested in hog hunting at night. Laser scopes and heat seeking and all that kind of stuff, okay? And so I'm Googling, what kind of rifle and what kind of night vision and what have you. And now every ad, for a long time, every ad was about hogs and hog food and feeders and what have you. And I don't understand much about cookies and all of that, but every click of the mouse somehow can be used against me. And it would take extreme measures to achieve total anonymity online, but I don't want to give out personal information. I want to avoid giving out as much as I possibly can. So never give out personal information unless you're absolutely certain of who you're giving it to. Do not reply to emails asking you to verify your personal information. Most legitimate companies will ask for that information over the telephone. Do not open attachments sent to you via email unless you know exactly what it is and who sent it. Do not click on a link in an email if you're not expecting it. Be careful, be careful. Here's rule number 4. Keep all computers in an open public space. Do not allow your kids to have a computer or an internet-connected device in their bedroom. Would you allow a stranger in your child's bedroom? Would you allow a boyfriend or girlfriend in your child's bedroom? I hope not. And you're asking for trouble if your children or teenagers have a computer in their bedroom behind closed doors. And they may argue this is an invasion of privacy and that you don't trust them, but one day they will thank you for not trusting their flesh. And you want to trust your child, but I don't trust their flesh. 5 minutes of curiosity in a teenager can send them down a dark path, and a parent has to facilitate and has to protect his child against that. If your child has an iPhone or an iPad or a smartphone, that should not be allowed to be used in their room. In fact, I don't believe they should be allowed to go to a friend's house that don't take the same precautions as you take. I'm not big on sleepovers anyway. I just don't like sleepovers. I have beds for my kids to sleep in at night, and that's just a personal thing for me. But listen, one night in the bedroom of a friend without parental supervision is all that the devil needs to plant seeds of perversions in that child's mind, and that may offend some of the parents, but they'll just have to get over being offended. Listen, it is a dangerous world. Have your children turn off cell phones before they go to bed, and you keep it. So why? Because if it's in their bedroom, there's a temptation in the middle of the night to get up and turn it on and text and post and surf, and because they probably got some hellion of a friend that's going to text them in the middle of the night when they should be sleeping. And if the cell phone's in your bedroom, you can text them back. Number 5, monitor your children's online activities. If and when you allow your teenager to have a cell phone, it should be crystal clear you have a right to look at every phone call, every text, every message, every email. If they delete the call history, the text history, if they delete the search history, you can be assured there's a serious problem. And you may think that I am overstating the matter and being overly protective, but you are responsible for them. Number six. Avoid chat rooms and instant messaging, or seriously limit their use. And I add seriously limit your use because I use WhatsApp to communicate with the Showers family. We WhatsApp back and forth yesterday. He has a bad habit of WhatsApping me while I'm sleeping. He'll WhatsApp me at 9 o'clock at night. But anyway, I love you, Brother Showers. But I believe that would qualify as an instant messaging app. It's the only use that I have for it. There is a danger in texting and sending instant messages that you become too familiar, too loose, too chatty. You're more likely to type something behind the screen that you wouldn't say to a face. A chat room is a good place for a kid to meet a stranger, a sexual predator, a child pornographer, other such evil characters. In fact, I honestly do not know of a good reason for any teenager to be in any chat room. I've tried to think of one, and maybe there is a chat room out there for independent, fundamental, Bible-believing Baptist Sunday school kids to discuss their Sunday school lessons, and if there is one, then okay, maybe so. I doubt that even exists. Number 7. I'm talking about your young people now. Do not allow internet access on mobile devices. We allowed Parker to have a cell phone when he turned 13. It was more for our peace of mind than it was for him. I want to be able to get a hold of him if he's staying at home by himself, be able to reach him. We don't have a land phone. But you have to make some rules for that. Not allowed to download any apps or have access to the internet on his phone. Can call or text family members and a few select adults like youth leaders that we've let him. Allowing a teenage boy to have internet access on his phone is a very foolish thing. Most pornography addictions begin in the middle school, if not earlier. When you do allow your children to have a cell phone, it should be abundantly clear that you control all passwords. A smartphone has a code. Mine has a 6-digit code, and you can create a code where that you can't download any software, any apps without entering in that code. And the reason why that you ought to know that code and not your child is because a child is smart. They can go to school, download an app that you don't want them to every day, undownload it, delete it by the time they get home from school, and you don't even know. But if you have the code, then you've blocked that. Let me give you the 8th one, and I'll be done here, and then I'll read my verse. And I added this: no texting while driving. 1 out of 4 motor vehicle accidents in the United States is texting and driving. You're more likely to get into an accident texting than an alcohol-related accident. And the reality is nearly everybody does it. Nearly everybody does it. You see people all the time on their phone while driving, and they're swerving. And I put this in here because I don't have a perfect record on this. But I have made a very conscious effort to stop it completely. Stop it completely. And the sad reality is that this week, some teenager will die because of texting while driving. A young life will needlessly be snuffed out for something so silly. So don't let it be you. Don't let it be you. One verse. Deuteronomy 22 and verse 8, I've preached from it before. When thou buildest a new house, verse 8, then thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof, that thou bring not blood upon thine house if any man fall from thence. A battlement is a wall. Seems like a strange thing. God wants them to build a wall around the roof of their homes. But in Bible days, a roof was like a patio. They would go up there and they would eat, and they would sit, and they would eat meals, and they would talk. It's kind of like a porch on top of a roof, a flat roof. Peter was on the rooftop when he was praying. He had a vision. Rahab hid the spies up on top of the roof. And God said you put a battlement, a barrier, a wall around the roof to keep somebody from falling off. If they fall off and it's negligence on your part, you're guilty of their death. Now, if you put the wall up and they jump off, then they're responsible. But you did everything that you could to prevent them from falling and hurting themselves in your house. And God said put a wall around. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about putting a wall, a barrier around your house and around your children and around your marriage and around your family. And I know that children can jump over the wall. I understand that. But we're doing everything that we can. We can't escape the digital world, but we're doing everything that we can to protect and guard and block. That's necessary. So what do? I'll tell you what you do. You lead your children to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The salvation and the spiritual growth of your children ought to be your number one concern. Not just salvation, but a personal, daily relationship with God. It is more important than their career. It is more important than their marriage. It is more important than their health. It is more important than their friends. It is more important than anything is, do they walk with God? And then the next thing you do is you have to teach your children to have discernment. To have discernment. You won't always be there. You can't always be looking over their shoulder. So here's what discernment is. Discernment is a values system. If you have an old dog and you throw the dog a bone, dirty old bone, and the dog will fight over the bone till you throw a stake down. When you throw a stake down, something happens in the dog's bone, in the dog's mind. And what happens is he evaluates that the stake is more valuable than the bone. He drops the bone and he goes for the stake. And what you have to do is you have to teach your children there are some things that are valuable and there are some things that are not valuable. Because they're going to go after what they perceive as valuable. You cannot block access to everything. No matter how hard you try, there are loopholes, there are ways to get around it. There are ways that the devil tries to get his foot in the door. So here's what I must do is I must teach my sons and my daughters that those things will destroy your life, and you are leaving steak on the ground and you're chewing on an old bone, and when they see it, they must be able to discern with their own eyes and their own ears that this filth will destroy me and run away even when I'm not there to tell them to teach them discernment. I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to cover them in prayer. You should never go a day without calling your children's name out in prayer before God. You ought to pray for their health, and pray for their spiritual growth, and pray for their marriage. I visited a home years ago, and they were building a home, and they just had the studs up. And they had gone through with Sharpies, and they had wrote scripture verses on all of the studs, all the wall, wrote all these verses around. And they were so proud of that. Wrote scripture verses, and then they're going to plaster it in. And so now you got Bible that surrounds the entire house. And I don't know if that keeps the demons out of it. I don't know. And I thought, that's a cool idea. I don't really know that really protects the home. But I know that prayer does. And Satan may get to my children, but it will be over 1,000 prayers. So God said, when you build a house and you put a roof on that house, you build a wall of protection to keep out temptation. The greatest way to overcome temptation is to avoid temptation. Make no provision for the flesh. Make no provision for your children's flesh. What a great sin to place temptation and danger in the path of my son or my daughter to build a house and not build a wall around it. Our Heavenly Father, we tried tonight just to be very practical and just to wrap this subject up tonight. Lord, what we have said just scratches the surface, and Other people have written and preached and said, Lord, much more eloquently than I can. I have more concern, I guess, than I do solutions. But I pray that tonight, Lord, that we have probed thinking, that we've made us just to sit down and be somber for a minute and to recognize there's dangers, there's hazards. We already know that we're going to hear more horror stories, but they don't need to be here. It doesn't need to be our young people. It doesn't need to be these marriages, not these families tonight. Help us, Lord, to build that hedge of protection around our marriages and around relationships, around our church, and all around our children as well. I pray tonight, Lord, that a desire and a zeal for holiness would be evident in the lives of our young people. Because no matter how many rules that we place upon their lives, you can always get around rules. And there comes a day when you don't have to obey the rules. And I pray, Lord, that during these formative years, they don't balk, they don't rebel at the rules and the restrictions, but they see that as somebody that loves them and cares enough for them that says, I'm not going to let you go a wrong way. I pray, Lord, that during these years that you would instill in their hearts holiness and godliness and a love for you, so that when there are no rules, the relationship is enough to keep them straight. Keep your hand upon their lives. Bless them. Bless these families. Bless these marriages, these little babies that are just being born and just coming into the church. I pray that you'd bless them tonight. Thank you for our time together. I pray in Jesus' name.